The Karen Reed trial, part 2. It's the second trial for Karen Reed. Let me ask you a question. Do you really think that she was responsible for her boyfriend's death, or do you think someone else did it and there was a cover-up? Well, that's really the question, isn't it? We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Plus, listen to this. You're going to have a bonus. There's not only this high-profile trial, there is another trial that's commenced this past week. We're going to tell you about that one, too. So you got 2 for 1 this time. Anyway, welcome aboard. It's the Charlie Crime Train, what some people call the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. All individuals described or mentioned in this presentation should be considered innocent until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains subject matter such as violence and graphic descriptions. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to the Charlie Crime Train today. Glad to have you on board. We're going to be talking about Karen Reed, the second trial, and we're going to have a bonus part for another very high-profile trial. I'm talking about the Doomsday Mom, Lori Vallow. We're going to be talking about that as well. I'm going to give you an update on that, kind of get you up to date, you might say. Been a lot of things happening this past week. By the way, I hope you did get an opportunity to go to our YouTube channel, check out our YouTube Crime Talk that was released this week already. James Buckland and I talked about our other previous 2 podcasts that we have released. I think you're going to find some really good information there. Actually recorded that one down in South Florida. I was there on a mission down below West Palm Beach. And that's where the Charlie Crime Train was recorded last time. And now we're back up in Central Florida, and we're glad to have you on board today. Let me invite you to reach out with a shout-out. If you're a seasoned listener or if you're a first-time listener, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach me, charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster at gmail.com. You can ask questions. You can make suggestions about what you'd like to hear us cover. You can even lodge objections. You can disagree. It is a safe place, and we would love to hear from you. Now, let me remind you also to jump on over to PeacemakerNetwork.com. We're sponsored by PeacemakerNetwork.com. You can read about those brave heroes, the men and women of the military, the first responders, and the law enforcement that keep you and I safe, that are out there risking their life. In fact, last week when we were talking about the Charlie Crime Talk episode, we mentioned a young man, 38 years of age, Matthew. He gave his life to protect others. There's a bunch of heroes out there like that. You need to read all about it, and you can become a part of supporting those people by just checking in to the PeacemakerNetwork.com. We have a whole bunch of episodes that's already stored on our website at charliecrimebuster.com. Not just episodes about Karen Reed, but episodes about true crime. Over 200, like 250, 60 episodes we have that's available for you to check out. And so let me encourage you to go on over to charliecrimebuster.com. Now that's a little housekeeping out of the way, you might say. Welcome on to the Charlie Crime Train today. Now we are talking about Karen Reed, but first of all, let me just give you a little bonus. We're going to tell you what happened in the Lori Vallow Daybell's trial. You might get them mixed up if you don't watch it. Well, there are 2 of them. There's 2 trials, Lori Vallow and Karen Reed, and interesting enough, both of them are in the process of picking the jury. The big thing about Lori Vallow, wow, whoopee, she is defending herself. That's right, defending herself. She's going to be her own lawyer. This is that doomsday lady, if you remember, the one who we were all trying to find out what happened to her kids. Well, now she's on trial in Arizona, and this charge is conspiracy to commit the murder of Charles Vallow, her 4th husband. And that was really the very first murder involved in this whole situation. Before it was over, there was not only Charles Vallow that was dead, it was her 2 children that died. It was her lover's wife who died. And then on top of that, the spiritual hitman, her brother, her own brother, well, he died not mysteriously, but they said of natural reasons. So you got like 5 deaths, and plus there was another situation where another guy, well, they took a shot at him, but thank God they missed. So boy, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the Charles Vallow trial, where Lori is on trial for conspiracy to commit the murder of Charles Vallow. Now, if you want to get caught up on that one, again, go on over to charliecrimebuster.com and you can find a whole bunch of podcast episodes about that. So now we find out that there have been 13 men and 3 women who have been picked to serve on Lori Vallow Daybell's jury. Now, the judge does say that the alternate jurors, now they're going to be picked at the end of the case by lottery. Trial will last, well, according to experts, at the latest until May the 15th. And there's likely going to be delays. The hours are set to be between Monday and Thursday from 10:30 to 4:30. Lunch every day at noon for 90 minutes. If you're going to try to find out all you can about that trial, that is the schedule. And they're going to be taking that on next week. Now, the Karen Reed trial, and we'll update you on that one as well, they're still picking the jury, but they haven't got the jury picked yet. And we'll tell you a little more about that in a moment. But the Lori Vallow trial, the jury has already been picked, so they're going to be getting going this coming week. Now, complicating that trial, though, is the fact that Lori Vallow decided to represent herself. I guess she thought she didn't have anything to lose. She's already in prison for the rest of her life without the possibility of parole for all those other people that were murdered. So I guess she said, hey, let me just take a fling at it and represent myself. Now, it has been said that this is likely going to complicate the jury selection. That was what even the judge had said, but it seems like they've gotten that jury together pretty well. Now, Lori said that she had studied some case law during her time in prison. And she also said she had experience in court. Well, she's had experience in court for sure, right? Because she's been there enough of all these trials. Not only her trial, but she certainly probably followed what happened to her new husband, whom they both conspired to kill his wife. Well, she's going to be representing herself. Now, if found guilty, she again faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. And she's already serving multiple life sentences with no possibility of parole after the convictions in Idaho. Now, let me correct that. If she's found guilty in this particular one, the one about her husband, where they're alleging she conspired to kill him, she could have life in prison with the possibility of parole. But that's the only one. She's already spending multiple life sentences with no possibility of parole. So it's a mute, it's mute any way you go about it. But if she gets this one, she would have the possibility of parole after 25 years. But surprise, 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 that's not going to work because she's already in prison without the possibility of parole. So she's going to be in prison for the rest of her life, and that's a good thing because she doesn't need to be out there and being a part of anything else that took so many people's lives, and especially 2 precious children. Now, that trial, by the way, is not the last of her legal troubles. Lori also is going to be facing conspiracy to commit murder for the attempted shooting of her niece's husband, and that was Brandon Bordeaux. You see, Bordeaux was shot back in 2019, shot at, while he was driving near his home, but he was unhurt. Now, prosecutors say, and they're telling folks, that Cox carried out the shooting. That's Alex Cox, her spiritual hitman, but missed the target. And Lori is also pleading not guilty to that charge. Now, whether she's going to defend herself in that charge or not, we don't know, but there's at least 2 more trials, including this one, that's yet going to come. Now, we're going to find out that we believe that they're going to be going pretty quickly. They're going to have to do some other things to get her her trial up and going, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens in all those things. Now, let's talk about Karen Reed. The work on the selection of the jurors for Karen Reed's trial, well, it's going to continue. They don't have them all picked yet. You see, the first 4 days, well, that ended up with about 10 people selected to serve. And Reed, it appears to be, in watching this thing unfold, that she is playing a very active role in the selection process. She sits just behind her lawyers as the juries are brought up one by one and questioned. She also, they can see her huddling with her legal team as they talk about which jurors they want to keep or reject. So they are allowing her to be a part of the process. Now, one more thing that's really interested in this trial is that on that side with Karen Reed and her attorneys, as I told you during the last podcast, there is a new attorney. That attorney, if you remember, during the first trial was an alternate juror in Reed's first trial. Now, I've never heard of this happening, and I don't believe anybody else has heard of this happening, where a juror who had sat through the trial as an alternate juror, she was so convinced that Karen Reed was innocent, so convinced that Karen Reed was being railroaded. You know what? She went to Karen Reed's defense team after it was all over, and she asked to be a part of the defense. So sitting at that defense table is a lady lawyer who was an alternate juror in the first trial. Now, can you imagine what she can add to the defense of Karen Reed? Think about it. She knows what resonated with the jury and what did not resonate with the jury in the first trial. She knows what witnesses really connected with the jury and what witnesses did not connect to the jury in the first trial. So let me ask you, how much of an advantage is this going to give the defense? You see, the defense now knows just about everything that the prosecution is going to throw at them because they've been through that first trial. But wait a minute. Now remember, in this trial with Karen Reed, there is another surprise, another difference. You say, what's different in this trial than the first trial? Well, one of the things different in this trial than the first trial is that she has on her side now a lawyer who was actually an alternate juror in the first trial. There's something else that you need to know about this next trial that I think is very important as we look at it. I'm going to tell you all about that in just a moment. But we always like to take just a moment to lighten the load, and we like to do that with a Crazy Crook story. Every week we share that with you. And so now it is time for Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. This Crazy Crook story comes from Tampa, Florida. Ha ha, another Florida man. And it has really a very, a very newsworthy part of this one, because we're hearing all today about the Tulsa Cybertruck, and we hear about all of those vandalism that's taking place because of the political connection, of course, with this Tulsa truck and the Tulsa company. And that goes with, the founder of Tulsa. But this is a guy who decided to go try out one of those Tulsa Cybertrucks. Wanted to take it for a test drive, and he ended up getting arrested. We're going to tell you all about that. Now, according to a criminal affidavit, his name is Dexter Smithen, and he went to a Tulsa dealership, in March the 26th, actually, and he met with a salesperson there in Tampa, and he chose to do a test drive with a Cybertruck Cyber Beast. Boy, I'd like to see that, wouldn't you? Well, the salesperson then said that Smithen gave him his driver's license. The photo matched Smithen. He then signed an agreement to test drive the Tesla Cybertruck for no longer than 30 minutes and return it to the dealership. But guess what? You already know, right? He did not return it to the dealership. Nope. Did not return it. Well, can you imagine what's happening at this Cybertruck dealership, the Tesla Cybertruck dealership? Can you imagine what's taking place? Oh my, we just let this guy drive out and he's not back. Well, the first thing they did, they said, let's call the phone number, find out where he is. They called the phone number listed on the test drive agreement. Surprise, but it was disconnected. Then they didn't know what else to do, so they emailed him and said, hey, bring that truck back. They demanded the truck back. Well, on March the 31st, now this is several days after he took that truck on a test drive, this affidavit also says that a different salesperson, they used the geolocation tracking to find his vehicle. And they found it parked at a Home Depot. And when they saw it coming into the Home Depot, they followed it, went to the Home Depot. They saw this guy Smithen get out and go into the store. So they got a cell phone video of Smithen then walking through the parking lot. And then at that time, the salesperson took the truck and they reported the incident to the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Hillsborough County is the jurisdiction of Tampa. So they traced him down through the geo connection. They find him there at this shop, the Home Depot. They video him going back into the shop. They get the vehicle, they take it, and then they call the sheriff's office, and you think it's all over. You think that that's just crazy enough that anybody would do that. But here is where the crazy thing comes. And folks, it's happened on April the 1st, and no, this is not April Fool. This is not April Fool. This is just another crazy crook. I'm not trying to fool you. On April the 1st, 2025, according to this affidavit, Smithen, the guy who took that truck out for a spin and didn't return it for days upon days upon days, can you believe this? He returned back to that very Tesla dealership. And when the deputy talked to Smithen, who of course they called when they found him there, he said he went back to the store to get belongings that he left behind in the Cybertruck. And then you know what happened. They arrested him. And while searching him, they found 5 credit or bank cards in the names of 5 different people. And Smithen, well, he's now been charged with grand theft of more than $100,000 and unlawful possession of personal identification. So this crazy crook who decided to take a Tesla Cybertruck for a spin and not return it, took it joyriding, and then after he came and he found that they had took the vehicle, he decided to go back to the dealership where he sold the vehicle from to get his belongings he left in the truck. Well, my friend, this guy indeed is Charlie Crimebuster's crazy crook of the week. Okay, now back to our main focus. Now, I told you that one of the surprising things about the case was the fact that this jurist who was with the first trial is now working with the defense. There's something else that I think is going to change the outcome of the case. Now, certainly she's going to be, I think, an asset to the defense, but there's something else that's coming that's going to be an asset to the prosecution. And I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. But let me get you caught up on what really happened this last week as they found themselves trying to get a jury. Now, they brought these folks up one-to-one, and they questioned them, and of course I told you she was already becoming a part of that. On Friday, one woman who was previously selected was removed from the panel. Don't know why, but they did remove her, and they replaced her with a different woman. Now, so now the total now for the jury for Karen Reed, which is not finished yet, the total includes 5 men and 5 women. Now, the court is seeking to seat 16 jurors. 12 of them will end up deliberating, and 4 will serve as alternates. Now, remember that new attorney for Karen that's joined the team over there was an alternate in the last one. Well, there are going to be 4 alternates in this one. Now, this process, it's going a lot faster than I thought. I thought that it would take weeks upon weeks upon weeks. But Friday, they already got 10 people together. But after that now, Friday, something else happened. There was another bombshell news report, and that is Reed is now appealing her case all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. Now you say, why is she appealing the case? Well, if you listened last week, you know. When the first jury returned the verdict, there were 3 charges. They said they could not agree on all 3 charges, but we have found now through talking to other jurists that was upon that trial that they had already agreed not guilty on 2 of those 3 charges. On number 1 and number 3, they had said not guilty. So all was left was number 2. But the ballot did not say that, and the judge did not read it that way. So she just called it a mistrial and said, we're going to try the whole thing over and all 3 charges are going to stick. Well, her attorneys, as well as herself and other people, do not think that's right. This jury had already agreed to not guilty on 2 of the charges. So the defense was seeking to appeal this so that the only charge she could be charged with in this coming trial is that charge number 2, which was a much lesser charge than the other 2. The other 2 meant basically that she did this out of anger and with intent she killed her boyfriend. The number 2 charge was not that critical, it wasn't second-degree murder. And so they're trying to get those 2 heavier charges out. Well, they appealed it once, and they were turned down. They appealed it, first of all, to the judge, who's now handling this case, Judge Cannon. She said, nope. Then they appealed it to one of the courts there in the district, and they said no. And then to the state court, and the state court said no, but Karen's attorneys are not done yet. On Thursday, it was announced they were appealing it to the Supreme Court of the United States. And we heard about that just past Friday. So what will the Supreme Court do? Will they hear it? Or will they just let it go? If they hear it, that could really change the way that this trial is going to be. I'm sure if they say they're going to hear it, then the defense is going to again seek another continuance in this trial. Don't know whether the judge will grant it or not, but I guarantee you they'll seek it. Then they'll probably then try to get an injunction to order the trial to stop until they hear from the Supreme Court. Or the Supreme Court may say, hey, we're just not going to hear it and let the trial go on. So that's going to be a little surprise in this whole situation. What if the state Supreme Court, or the United States Supreme Court, not the state, the United States Supreme Court says, no, this is double jeopardy. She should not be tried for those 2 charges that the other jury had agreed on, and she should only be tried on the 1 charge. There are a lot of people think that that's the way that the prosecution should have done in the first place, that it's awfully fair that if a jury of her peers said not guilty on those 2 most serious charges, they should only be able to charge her with the lesser charge. What do you think about that? I mean, I've got different thoughts about it. What do you think about it? Do you think that because a jury had said not guilty of those 2 charges, that the state should then be able to come back and charge all 3 charges again? But even though the jury said not guilty on 2 of the 3 charges? Well, I'd like to hear from you. Reach out with a shout out, Charlie Crimebuster at gmail.com. So this is going a lot faster. This was the next and final step, by the way, in the appeal, It was denied by the Federal Appeals Court just last week. And, of course, the legal team is hopeful that the Supreme Court will agree that her constitutional protection against double jeopardy would mean that 2 of the 3 charges against her should be dropped. Now, again, they're arguing that on the fact that multiple jurors have come forward since the first trial ended in a mistrial to say that they were unanimously in favor of acquitting her on 2 of the charges. That was just right before the mistrial took place. So it would be a real surprise if the Supreme Court comes back and really says, okay, we're going to have to do this differently. You're going to have to only charge her with 1 charge. Now, there's a couple of other things, and don't know if we have time to get into all of them, but I want to get into a couple of them real quick. Number 1, the other surprise in this is that, and it's not a surprise, but it's going to be different in this trial. Going to be different in this trial because now there's a alternate juror that's on the defense team. But what about the prosecution? It is a different prosecutor this time, my friend. And this prosecutor has a lot of experience. He actually defended Whitey. And not only does he have experience as a prosecutor, but he himself was a defense attorney himself, and a very successful one. So I believe this is going to make a big difference in this trial. I believe we're going to see I believe it's going to be a whole lot tighter. I believe it's going to be a whole lot more concise. And I believe that they know now the mistakes they made during the first trial, and they're going to correct those mistakes. One thing you're going to see in this coming trial, and they've already had all kinds of hearings back and forth on who they can hear as a witness and who they can't hear as a witness. But the prosecution will be using a different expert on accident reconstruction than they had the first time. The first time they had Trooper Paul, bless his heart. You know, a great guy, I'm sure, a great trooper, I'm sure, but it was just a little over his head when you talk about all of the things involved in reconstructing an accident like this. You got to talk about velocity and where would a body go if it was hit with a car, and is it possible? Now remember, the defense did not have that expert, but actually the prosecution or the state had actually got ARCA, which is a expert witness group who actually are experts in the area of reconstruction. They ended up testifying for the defense in the first trial. And a guy by the name of Daniel Wolf and Andrew Rischeider, they presented themselves as being impartial to the jury. And they said, now get this, they said in that first trial that his injuries were not consistent to being hit by a vehicle. But they were consistent of somebody being beaten up and dragged up in the snow. Now, this was a real big deal because the defense said that these guys are impartial, that they did not have a bias coming in. But hold on to your hats. With just weeks to go before the retrial, Brennan, that's the new prosecutor, he revealed in the court that the experts had submitted an invoice to the defense for $23,000, dated July the 12th, just 11 days after the mistrial. And Brennan, he accused the defense of deliberately lying in court that these experts were not biased in their opinion. And they wanted the experts banned from testifying at the retrial. But now Judge Cannon, she says that we're going to allow these experts, Wolf and Rinsler, we're going to allow them to return, but the defense will not be able to present them as unbiased experts like they did during the last trial. So, will that make a difference? I don't know. What do you think? So here it is. Now, mark this down. Trooper Paul was totally outclassed by the ARCA guys who came, these experts on crash reconstruction. He was totally out of his league with these guys. But wait a minute. Now, the prosecutor has another expert. Another expert who I will guarantee you will probably go, head to toe with these other experts. So this is going to be a battle of the experts for sure. And will that make a difference? Now, in most second trials, it usually goes in favor of the defense. I said usually. We know another episode that we shared not long ago, and when we thought about the unthinkable things, was the Menendez brothers. And that one, they had two trials, but the second trial ended in favor of the prosecution. But what about this one? Well, we're going to know pretty soon. We're getting ready to get underway. Just a few more jurors brought to the panel, and we will have the green to go as they do in NASCAR. That green flag will be waved, and we'll be on to the race between the prosecution and the defense. And we're going to keep you all updated right here on Charlie Crimebuster. So that's just some stuff about updating you on what's happening with the Karen Reed and with, of course, Lori Vallow. Next week, we're going to get you even more information, and maybe the trial would almost be ready to start. They didn't think it would for 3 or 4 weeks, but we might be on for an earlier start in the Karen Reed trial? And will we hear from the United States Supreme Court before then? Well, hold on to your hats. We'll find out, and we'll let you know. Don't forget, coming up this week is Charlie's Crime Talk with James Buckland and myself. Join us on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and tag it Charlie Crimebuster. We will look forward to seeing you there. Well, that's it. We're going to wrap it up for this time. Until this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert, for the life you save might be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. peacemakernetwork.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag at Charlie Crimebuster. And once you arrive there, click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts are for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you. So please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Or you may call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you will join us next week for another exciting crime story with Charlie Crimebuster.